Welcome to Nuanced Beauty. This podcast is intended to be a spot where my husband Bill and I will capture some complex thoughts and challenge us to hold to our opinions loosely so that we can see the beauty in others and the beauty in ourselves. I want to challenge us to dive deeper into those everyday topics and those sticky topics that we might shy away from, or we might bulldoze over others with our opinions. Because I think there's wisdom in this idea that if we all thought exactly the same, there would be no need for anyone else. So let's have a conversation and let's get nuanced. Hi guys, welcome back to Nuanced Beauty. Today I'm bringing in another interview. This interview is with a yoga instructor. Her name is Caia and she teaches at Root to Rise, which is a studio just a few minutes from my house. So welcome, Caia.
Hi, thank you. I'm happy to
Thank
be here.
thank you. I'm so glad to have you. Would you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself? What got you started in yoga and what's the passion or drive that has kept you going with it?
Sure, absolutely. So I've been practicing yoga for, oh gosh, 20 years now. And I'm an overthinker. I'm a worrier. I'm a recovering perfectionist, um,
Can
in
relate.
process.
Yes.
But I started practicing yoga when I was in college, which that will date me. So back in my early 20s. And I was an athlete in high school. And so I started yoga in my early 20s, and I found that it was an hour that I could go and not be stressing about anything. And I actually started my yoga practice in Bikram yoga, which is not the style that we offer at my studio now.
Hmm.
Bikram yoga is a little bit different. The room is heated to 105 degrees, not the 90 degrees that we have at my studio.
Yeah.
And it's really intense. It's super hot, super challenging, very strict and regimented. And so literally I would tell people that when I would go to class, all that would be on my mind was staying upright and breathing. But that was helpful to me because I wasn't thinking about what I had to cook for dinner or what was going on at work or what was going on with my kids. That was good for me. So my practice has kind of waxed and waned over the years. I had two kids. I've been through a couple of career changes. And we moved down here to Florida, and I found the studio Hotspot Power Yoga, which it's the studio that I ultimately ended up going into partnership with.
Hmm.
But I just found community and this wonderful practice that made me feel so comfortable in my own skin. I felt good physically after it. I felt good emotionally, mentally, all the stuff. And so I practiced down in the San Marco neighborhood for a while because I took my daughter to a preschool down there.
Okay.
It's actually up there. And ultimately it got to be too much of a commute. And I had it on my calendar because I'm a type A person. I had it on my calendar, like, before the next charge hits, you need to cancel your membership because it's just you're not getting down there enough. And it came to me on my mat one day that there's no yoga studio out here in the St. John's area. And I don't know, I don't know what made me think that I could do it, but I was like, well,
That's
I'm just
awesome.
gonna, yeah. I sent an email to the owner of the studio who I had never met. And I said, are you thinking about opening a studio in the St. John's area? Because it's really growing out here. And she wrote me back. Actually, it took a while for her to write me back because she thought I was crazy. But she ultimately wrote me back and she was like, I'm not really looking to open another studio, but I'd be happy to guide you and be in partnership with you. And yet again, I mean, when things are meant to be, I guess they're meant to be, because now I look back and I'm like, what made me think that I could do that?
That's so
Um,
cool. Way to
but
jump
we went
in.
for it. And so I have no business background. Before I got into this, I actually worked in medicine. My training is I have a master's in the health sciences, and used to work as a physician assistant in neurosurgery. So I've been told that I'm the most overqualified yoga teacher that you might ever have.
What a shift in careers. But I get it. It's yoga is just the ability to focus and be present and like what it does for your body. Like I get why you would be drawn to it, but yeah, that is a definite shift.
It's been, but it's so fulfilling. And I've been told, I'm pretty open about the fact that this is my third career. And it's, I feel that I'm able to impact other people's lives in the best way possible. And when I worked in medicine, I loved working in medicine. I loved talking to patients and helping them feel better, following them through their health journey. But now I get to see people so much more often, and I'm able to, they share what's going on in their lives with me, and we're able to kind of go through things together and support each other. And I feel like it's just meant to be. It's the weirdest path, but it's worked
Mhm.
out beautifully. So, and
Now,
yeah, I
how
told you before we started this that I would go down the rabbit hole, and I don't even remember what your question was. Did I answer your question?
you did. It was just tell me about yourself, and kind of what got you started and what keeps you going. So that definitely answered it.
Sure.
How long ago did you open the studio?
I opened the studio in August of 2020.
Okay.
Um, Funny enough, I signed my partnership agreement with Leah Hansen, who's the founder of Hotspot, who's a dear friend of mine. I signed my partnership agreement in February of 2020, and that's when I signed
Oh,
my lease. And ironically enough, that's the same day that Earth Fair, which was our anchor store for the shopping center that we're in,
yes.
that was the day that Earth Fair declared bankruptcy.
Oh,
And
wow.
so the day that I signed my lease was the day that we learned that Earth Fair, the anchor store, was going to be going away.
And
But and
for those that aren't in the Florida area, I believe Earth Fair is like an organic, kind of like a Whole Foods or a Sprouts, correct?
yes, yes,
So there
yes.
is a shopping center nearby that has a handful of restaurants, and yeah, there was a location that was going to be Earth Fair. So that just to kind of give the magnitude to someone listening, like that's a huge business dynamic shift that could really
Yes.
impact a studio.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons that I chose this shopping center was because Earth Fair was the anchor. And then the day I signed my lease, they went bankrupt. And
Oof.
I talked to a lot of people when it happened, and they said, there's probably a way to get out of your lease because you signed the lease with the understanding that they would be there. But I really believed in the location, and I believed in what we were doing. I felt like I kind of felt like this is something that I'm looking for out here, so other people must be looking for it too.
Hmm.
And so I just stuck with it. Additionally, August 2020 was the middle of COVID, if you remember.
Yes.
Um, so I signed my lease in February, and that was before all the shutdowns. When did you move here? Were you here at that point?
No, we moved here in January of 22.
Okay. All
So we've
right.
been
So
here for a
Florida
year and a
didn't
half,
shut down.
and we shut down in March, but I would say that Seattle was still shut down this year.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Florida has been I would have to say that Florida has been a good place to run a business
yeah.
during these tumultuous times, because I'm grateful that I've been able to have my business open, but it has been a roller coaster. So, I signed my lease in February, and then my kids came home for spring break in March and didn't go back for 6 months to school.
Yes.
And
Uh,
I learned right then and there that I am not a school teacher. Uh,
yes. Thank
but
you, teachers. Everyone that's listening, that's a teacher. Thank you so much.
yes, much respect to the school teachers. You guys deserve to make millions of dollars a year. But yeah, so but like we stuck with it, and we did have a few delays because of COVID and all the shutdowns. But
Hmm.
we still opened on time, and the studio actually opened. We opened our doors on August 29th of 2020, and it was so hot, but it was so wonderful. We had lots of people. We did free classes the first weekend, and I felt like, I had read the room, I had read the neighborhood that people wanted this. And it does seem people were seeking community and movement because we'd all been stuck inside by
Yeah.
ourselves for a really long time. So the connection both to ourselves and to each other was something that people seem to be craving.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I get that for sure. Kind of fast forward to more recently, you had rebranded and became Root to Rise. I'm kind of curious what led you to pick that name because when I hear Root to Rise, I picture a tree. So we garden a bit, and Bill does this method of growing fruit trees that they're like, it's called Grow a Little Fruit Tree. There's a book you can read on it. And you basically grow a fruit tree, but you keep it like under 8 feet tall. And
Mhm.
the book talks about the seasons where the tree is trying to like grow its branches. And then the season where the tree is trying to grow its roots, wintertime. And so when I read or like think through root to rise, I kind of picture this idea of like the base of a tree and its roots going into the ground. And then having that strong root structure allows the branches in the spring and summer to flourish outward.
Yeah, yeah, that has a lot to do with it. Yeah, we opened in August of 2020, and in March of 2023, we made the if I may say so, it was a brave decision on my part because has been such a support for me all along the way.
Hmm.
But we're actually the other Hotspot Power Yogas are geographically pretty far away from us, and so we had started going in our own direction.
Hmm.
And really, we are a very local community-based studio. And so the root part, I mean, there's so many translations for it, but I feel that our studio is rooted in this community, that we have really found our foundation here in St. Johns County. We get involved with our members, with what's going on in their lives. We get involved with their causes. We know what's going on. We're reaching out to people here. So the roots are in the ground and spreading so that we're able to support this community. And then because of that, we're able to rise up and spread. The branches are spreading far and wide, and the leaves and the flowers and the fruits, and however poetic you want to get about that.
Yeah, yeah.
But root to rise is a very common thing. It's a phrase that a lot of yoga teachers use. I mean, it kind of came to me out of it was one of those spur of the moment things. My manager Diane is a really good friend of mine too. That's the thing with yoga, is that like it's business, but the relationships turn into friendships and almost like family. And
Uh-huh.
so I was talking with Diane about it, and I was just kind of like throwing out names about like maybe this, maybe that, and I said root to rise, and she said, "Ooh, I really
I
like
like
that."
that. Yeah, I like it. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
awesome.
And so because we say like in yoga, you want to ground down your feet,
Hmm.
ground down and root down and rise up. So when you're taking a tree pose, there's a yogi and tree pose in our logo because it's one of the most like people know that, people recognize someone in
Hmm.
tree pose. They're like, oh yeah, that's yoga. You
Yes.
got to ground down that standing foot so you can rise up and reach your arms up to the sky. And
Hmm.
that's kind of, and so we say that in yoga, and it's actually something that's important in life. Are you rooted down in your family? Are you rooted down in your priorities and in your values? Because when you're rooted down, that's when you can really thrive and blossom and quote unquote rise up. So, yeah.
I like it.
Thanks.
Um, yeah, no, so shifting gears, we kind of got into a nice intro there, and thank you for sharing that. I'm sure that folks that listen who are around here, they might enjoy getting a little bit of the backstory. Um,
Yeah.
but talking about yoga in general, I approached you because I've been to a handful of classes at Root to Rise and a little bit about my yoga journey. I started practicing in maybe 2014, and a coworker of mine went to a place called Misa Yoga out in West Seattle, and this instructor runs a studio in her backyard.
Okay.
And she has like an outdoor space when it's nice in the 3 months of summer
Mhm.
in Seattle, and that's it. And then she has this shed, but I hesitate to call it a shed because it is a super bougie, like bamboo floor, IKEA chandelier shed that can hold like 14 people in it. Um,
Nice.
so my yoga time was mostly in her studio, and then I did hot yoga for a season a couple years later after I had my son. Um, but I started doing yoga because I was doing some CrossFit and I was doing some running, and I felt like I needed to do some flexibility type things.
Right.
Um, I feel like had you asked me who does yoga before I began regularly practicing, I would have envisioned this. Well, I would have envisioned a couple people. One of the people would have been like Target shopping, athleisure wearing mom, super slender and put together, but looks good in athleisure.
Hmm.
Or I would have pictured this like adventurous young college student who is super slender and doing crazy poses on a cliff, right?
Right.
And
Yep.
I'm sure that I'm not the only person who's made these kind of stereotypical assumptions. And I found getting into yoga and actually doing it for a while that like there's way more nuance. There's way more nuance, right? Like people are people, and it's just it's much more deep than that. So I'm wondering, as an instructor, how do you help students coming into yoga, maybe newer in their practice, get past these stereotypes or get past feeling uncomfortable in their own body and trying to find beauty in their practice?
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh, that's a loaded question, but that's
That's
what
the
I
meat and
do.
potatoes, right?
That's it. Yes. So just backtracking a second, like what you were saying about your impression of who does yoga,
Hmm.
what a yoga practitioner looks like. Until I started yoga, I thought yoga people were crazy, incense burning, tree huggers, vegans. Yeah,
Yeah.
I had a stereotype, and guess what? I'm not any of those. I also am not tall, thin, blonde, or rich.
Yeah. I feel that, man. Lululemon is expensive, guys.
So that is, I tell people, and I joke about this a lot because I have struggled with body image my entire life. I was an athlete when I was a kid. I was actually a competitive ice skater from the age of 6 to 14. And then I
Wow.
was a soccer player, so I got the thighs going on, and I actually have a memory of a ballet teacher telling me that my thighs were too big.
Ugh.
So that we all carry around our baggage, whatever. But I started doing yoga because I heard hot yoga specifically because I heard that you could lose 5 pounds in one class.
Oh, that water weight, man.
And
Yeah.
it's true. You actually
Yeah.
totally can, because I mean, I don't, the way I sweat a lot, like I think about hot yoga and I start sweating. Like it's just because it's hot, and my body is acclimated. Like this is what you do, but to cool off your body, you're going to sweat. So I started hot yoga totally for the exercise reasons, totally based on I want to be skinny. I want to change my body.
Hmm.
I stayed in yoga because first of all, it helped me so much mentally and emotionally, but I also stayed because it helped me recognize that my body, and this is something I work on, it's not like a journey, or it's not that I've reached this destination. I'm on this journey every day.
Hmm.
But it is every day teaching me how magnificent and perfect and amazing my body is, your body is, everybody is. Like
Hmm.
you have 2 kids, I have 2 kids, we created life. So am I going to get upset that my belly kind of hangs out because that's a belly that like nurtured a child in there for 10 months, which by the
Yes.
way, I always tell people it's not 9 months, it's 10 months. Thank you very much.
Valid point. Yes. Yeah,
But
that's a good
but
point.
so I come from a place of knowing what it feels like to feel imperfect and to feel like you don't fit in and to feel like you don't fit the mold. And so my goal when I'm teaching class, and I feel that my team, I have over 20 teachers on team, and I feel that we're very aligned on this, is that we seek to empower people and make them realize, help them realize that they're just as they're meant to be. Like we're not all the same. If we all had the same bodies, if we all looked the same, if we all had the same yoga practice, the world would be a really boring place. And
Right.
so we try to focus on what can you do. I just taught a class tonight, and I was talking about the cans and the can'ts. And I said, you can say as many 4-letter words in the studio as you want, but don't say can't. I don't like I can't. And it's not about me, but it's about all of us. Like when we think about what we can't do, we're placing a limitation on ourselves. And so it's about opening our minds and realizing that you're perfect just the way that you are. And so coming into the yoga studio, and I know that I felt it when I first walked in, because there's always going to be that tall supermodel yogi who's doing the amazing stuff in the corner. That's their practice. Good for them. That doesn't matter. That's going on their mat, not yours. And so I'm not the most serious yoga teacher. I have a lot of playfulness in the way that I practice and the way that I teach, but like that's none of your business what's going on their mat. You focus on what's going on in your mat, because what you're doing is perfect for you in the here and the now. We show up differently every day. And so what you do is what you need. Take what you need, leave what you don't need, and don't compare it to anybody else around you.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of the roundabout way. I told you I could talk.
No,
But
I
that's
like that. And I think that that resonates, I think that resonates with like beyond yoga. And I think that's why it can strike a nerve with anyone. Like anyone can step into a yoga practice and can get something out of it, because you, like, there's a component of it that hits our humanity in the imperfect, yet we all like long for this thing, and we all have these expectations of ourselves, but then
Mhm.
we also have to like figure out how to accept what we actually do and the differences that we each bring to the table.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
And
like that.
like I say at the beginning of most of my classes, drop the judgments, drop the expectations, drop the limitations, and
Hmm.
let's just see what's possible. And we say this a lot, and it sounds really cheesy. There's a lot about yoga that if you want to think it's cheesy, you can think it's cheesy, but it's a really back before I got really into yoga, I kind of rolled my eyes at a lot of this stuff. But like, if you choose to live with the mindset of anything is possible and seeking the positive and what you can do and what the opportunity is, rather than what might go wrong, it changes everything. It
Hmm.
changes how things turn out. And so like I like to speak to what's possible so that we can all see our potential, because we really all we do sell ourselves short, and
Yeah.
we tear ourselves down. And so I make a big deal of building people up, because every person that comes into the door of my studio is fighting a battle that nobody else knows about. We all have
Hmm.
stuff going on, right?
Hmm.
But everybody who walks in the door has a gift, and they need, like, I want to highlight their gift and make sure they know that they are special and they are individual and that they are valued. So because we need more of that in this world.
Yeah, for sure. Um, so I kind of a follow-on question there is to the person who might be too anxious to attend a yoga class, um, are there any online resources that you've loved and that you could point someone to maybe just take that first step and move forward and try out yoga and such?
Yeah, so I've never I don't have like an online guru or anything like that, which by the way, I don't believe in gurus. We're not that kind of yoga.
Uh-huh.
Uh,
That's
but
a-okay. Yeah.
But you know, the style of yoga that we practice at our studio is Baptiste yoga. And if you go onto YouTube, you can always find Baptiste yoga flows. Another thing that you can do, which I always recommend to people who are hesitant to come to classes, is to do a private session with your friends.
Yeah.
And so like a private session, actually, just I'm not trying to market my studio here, but just to give you like the price points here. So a drop-in for one class for one student on a regular day is $20.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have 4 of your friends that you guys want to go and do a class together, take a class together, each of you doing a drop-in is going to be $80. Now you
Okay.
compare that to my private rate, you can have a private session for up to 4 people for $70. And you
Nice.
can divide that between the 4 of you, and you can have the studio to yourself. We can completely like personalize the practice, take breaks, do what you need to do. I mean, we've thrown birthday parties, we've thrown divorce parties, we've hosted, sports teams. We can make it be what you need it to be and have you there with the people that you want to be there with. I am a big proponent of the fact that yoga means union. And so there is a lot about community
Yes.
that is significant for me specifically. And that doesn't mean it's that way for everyone. And so I am always in favor of, if you want to do it by yourself, come with your friends, with your safe people, and
Uh-huh.
have a private session together and have fun and laugh when you fall out, and see that it's all perfectly imperfect. And that way you can have that first experience, and then hopefully most people are nervous because the expectation they have of yoga is exactly what you and I thought it was going to be like,
Mm-hmm.
intimidating and perfect people. And
Super flexible, like
yeah,
doing, I don't even know, like any of the balancing poses.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so like, I think that's what people are intimidated by. And then you come in and you take a class and you realize, especially if you come with your friends, maybe you bring your friends who maybe are more flexible than you, or whatever, more athletic than you. But you see that like, it's just yoga. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a practice of yoga, because the ultimate thing is that the practice of yoga brings us into a presence and into a mindfulness. And the
Mm-hmm.
real practice of yoga, and here I go, I'm going to get cheesy for you, but the real practice begins when you leave the studio, because it's easy. Remember at the beginning of our conversation, I mentioned that I started yoga, and the hour that I would go into those classes would be the hour that I wasn't worrying. It would be the hour that I wasn't thinking about what was for dinner, what was going on at work, what was going on with my kids.
Right.
The real practice of yoga, the hard part, the challenge, is to carry that mindfulness and that peace of mind
Mm-hmm.
outside of the studio with you, so that the way that you respond when you fall out of a posture on your mat, it's just yoga. It's fine. Like, just get back up, learn your lesson, and get back up again, try again. And so carrying it with you when you leave the studio, that's when you're really implementing the yoga. When you leave the studio and you're in your everyday life. And I can speak to, I have 2 kids and sometimes they drive me crazy. And so for me to be able to use my yoga so that I don't lose my patience, so that I sit down and I listen, so that I respond instead of react, which is
Mm-hmm.
different.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so by coming and taking a class, like a private session with your friends, that it makes you realize this isn't as big of a deal as I thought it
Because you're
was, and it
making it
can
out
be
to be.
fun.
Yeah.
And then you can come and attend a real, like, not a real class because it's all a real class, but you could come and attend a public class,
With
and
strangers. Yeah.
yeah, and realize, and we make a big deal, like some people hate it but they love it in the end. Like, I ask people to get off their mats and meet the people around them, because a lot of people don't meet each other because they're shy, they're introverted, they're scared to step out of their own comfort zone. And so I'm like, hey, I'll do it for you. Go say hi to your friend, like go say hi to the person next to you. But
Yes.
ultimately, then when you go to Publix later and you see that person from yoga, you don't have to like run to the next aisle, right? Like, you
Right.
can actually say, oh, hey, I met you at yoga. and you've created a connection. And also you see them as real people, not like the crazy yogi who was doing a headstand, you know?
Yes,
So
like, yeah, these are actual people, like, just doing their life. I like that, and I really like the idea of, like, a small group class because I did not realize that, I had never considered that being an option, um,
yeah,
and
I mean,
the
you can come by yourself. It's way more fun to do it with people, with your friends. And
Mhm.
then if you've done it with your friends, you can do it with strangers.
Yeah.
And and all of a sudden the strangers aren't strangers. And it's a great way. Whenever I see people, like I'm on Nextdoor, I'm on all the social media networks, whatever, and people are like, I want to meet people. And I'm like, oh my God, just come to the studio. We'll like, we're aggressively friendly. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Well, that's a really good point about like having the opportunity to do a group session, but also the community. I feel like you've touched a lot about the community aspect. And that was going to be my final question. I wanted to challenge the at-home yogi if you happen to be listening. I personally think that there is a lot of beautiful and empowering depth to practicing in a community. And, it sounds like you'd kind of fall on that side as well. So I'm wondering, is there any encouragement that you would give someone to nudge them along to find their people to practice with?
Yeah. The thing is that anything, when we get uncomfortable, I mean, we say this a lot in the studio, like a lot of times you have to get uncomfortable to see change, to see
Mhm.
growth. I mean, come on, there's growing pains when you're a kid. I never had them. I don't know if you did, but
My
I hear
son
that.
is. He's super tall.
Yeah.
Yeah,
My
his
my
legs.
my husband suggested it to my son, so now my son says he has them, but I don't even know, like the power of suggestion. But anyway,
Uh-huh.
but anything worth achieving is not going to be easy. And it takes a lot of courage to do something that is intimidating to you. And I can tell you that walking into a yoga studio with a bunch of people in spandex, I've had body issues all my life. And like I wanted to walk in my sweatshirt, but it was 90 plus degrees in the room, so couldn't do that.
Mhm.
um but it's uncomfortable. But I would encourage baby steps for people that, you know, if you don't have someone to go with, if you show up at my studio, and I hope at any other studio, because all yoga is good yoga. And so if you're close to us, I would love to have people at my studio. But if you're not, I encourage you to go to any studio. And there should, I would hope that there would be a welcoming, open community to embrace you. And it just takes that first step. We often say the hardest part is showing up. And
Mhm.
then once you experience what a yoga class, how it makes you feel, you want to come back.
Mhm.
And you also realize that, like, it doesn't matter what all these people are doing in here, because what matters is what's happening on my mat and in my body and in my head. And so, that by coming into the studio and just allowing yourself to be a little uncomfortable with that experience,
Mhm.
the other side is worth it. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah,
uh
like I think that that's a great answer. It's finding room in the tension.
yeah.
Choosing to embrace a little tension for the sake of growth and possibility. Um
Yeah, because we have, there's a lot of postures and poses that we do in our practice that can be uncomfortable. Like, I don't know, like pigeon pose.
yeah.
Are you a fan of pigeon pose?
I
Many.
actually that's one of the few like hand balances that I can kind of almost do.
Well, there's like, when you get into a pigeon pose and you're opening your hips, and we're a sedentary society here in the West, and we all have tight hips, and it's uncomfortable. And it's interesting because we speak to this a lot, that the second, in our society, the second something's uncomfortable, we want to stop. Like, I don't want to do that, that's uncomfortable.
Mhm.
But and yoga is not about pain, and so if it's painful, that's definitely worth stopping. and pulling back. But if it's
Right.
uncomfortable, like a deep stretch, often if you breathe through it and you get to the other side, the good stuff's on
You
the other
feel a
side. All of a
release.
sudden it's like, yeah, all of a sudden it's like both mentally and physically. It's like, oh wow, I have better posture, or my back doesn't hurt as much, or I sleep better. There's so many things, but you have to go through that tension and that discomfort to experience that. And
Uh-huh.
so I often, we talk a lot about practicing yoga is it's a parallel to how we live our lives. And yet again, that's a very cheesy yoga thing to say, but I do believe it's true. And actually, it doesn't have to be yoga. It could be whatever you pursue. So maybe it's running, maybe it's CrossFit, maybe it's I don't know, whatever other thing
Some
people get into.
taekwondo or some yeah,
Yeah, but like
jujitsu.
the way that you approach something that you practice regularly mirrors the way that you live your life. So when you don't succeed, when you fall down, when you can't get into crow pose, or you fall out of an arm balance,
Oh
do
my
you
goodness. You just
like you
sorry. You just sparked a thought. When you said pigeon pose, I thought of crow pose.
I knew that was, I thought you were talking about bird. We were talking about birds. And so I was just
That's
going with
why.
it. It's all good. It's all good.
Sorry, carry on, carry on.
But like if you fall out, are you gonna like roll up your mat and walk out, or are you gonna
Come
there's three
catch
things that you can
yourself.
do.
Uh-huh,
You
and
you
try
can
again or accept that it's not happening today. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how you approach life too, right? Like something doesn't go right. Do you just quit and never try again? Do you decide, I'm going to try again right now? Or do you decide, I'm going to take this and learn from it and I'll try tomorrow? And these are all possible things. And like, I would hope that the, you know, I'm not going to say that there aren't times that it's appropriate to be like, okay, I don't need to do that anymore. Right. But like,
Mm-hmm.
but that when you practice yoga or whatever it is that lights that fire for you, the way that you do that, the more you practice, you're able to carry it into your life. And so just like when you get into these uncomfortable postures in yoga and you're and you want to come out, but you stay, and then you experience the good stuff afterwards. That's like going on the first date. I mean, I'm telling you, my husband's in my first date was awkward as you know what. And
Yes, love it.
yeah, my husband, so as you can tell, I talk a lot. My husband does not talk at all. Like, and I guess that's the yin to my yang.
Yeah, or the
But like,
the babbling brook
yes.
flows into the creek or the lake or whatever it is. Yes.
So like, but like there was something there from the very beginning for both of us, but it was uncomfortable at first, but we stayed with it. And,
Mm-hmm.
ultimately good things came of it. Also job interviews. Like job interviews are terribly uncomfortable, right?
Mm-hmm.
But often there's some job interviews that aren't worth your time, but there's some that like you get your dream job and
Right.
then you pursue your dreams, but you have to go through that uncomfortable part first.
Uh-huh.
So that's kind of that's my spiel about like getting through the rough stuff to
I
find the
like
good
it.
stuff, because that's life.
Yeah, that is, I think that perfectly provides an encouragement to anyone who might be interested in yoga. Um, or maybe like they want to get back into it and they've tried it in the past. I think that's a great way to end it.
Well, I would add one more thing that I've joked with a couple of my teachers that I mentioned this at the beginning, like earlier on in our conversation, like I'm not tall, I'm not thin, I'm not blonde, I'm not rich. And I
And
think
I
that
do yoga.
and I do yoga, and I own a yoga studio. I teach yoga, like, and I can talk all day long about yoga, obviously. But
Uh-huh.
like I've joked with people that I actually think that my being so imperfect has helped my business, because
I bet.
people walk in and they might be intimidated, like that the big yoga person's gonna intimidate me and be wearing the sports bra. I do not practice in a sports bra. Thank you very much. No, thank you.
Uh-huh.
But people walk in and they think that's what they're gonna get, and then they get me. And hey, you're perfect, I'm perfect, we're all perfect, but like I don't look like the perfect that's on the front of the magazine.
Uh-huh.
And it makes it okay to be whoever we are.
Yeah.
And so that would be the other thing that I would say, is that like everybody else is not as perfect as you might think they are.
Right, right. For those that might be put together on the outside, we all have something, right? It doesn't matter whether we're
Yeah,
wealthy
so
or not. There's something going on that is a challenge for us all.
and
Yeah.
if you do go to a community where everyone is perfect there, then I encourage you to go and be the perfectly imperfect person there to make other people feel comfortable. Well, like
Yeah.
not to like keep going down the foxhole here, but like I tell people a lot that I I mean I had a perfectly healthy childhood, and my parents are still together, and I didn't have a lot that I wanted for. But no matter what, I was not a cool kid. I was always on the outside. And
Hmm.
I struggled with not being a cool kid, my like all through high school. I remember that was hard to feel left out. And I look back now, and I truly believe that that was a blessing now, because it inspired me to create a community where everyone is welcome.
Hmm.
There's a saying, like I see it on Instagram all the time, like be the person that you needed when you were a kid, or when you were younger, or when you were struggling, whatever, however you want to put it.
Hmm.
And I didn't it's not something, and I'm not trying to like toot my own horn here, but like it's not something that I consciously did, but it's something that I craved for myself, to create a community where I was okay, and you're okay, and everybody's okay, and everybody's special, and nobody's special. Like everybody's special, don't get me wrong, but you know what I
Right.
mean? There's no
Right.
VIPs, because everybody's a VIP.
Yes.
And um and that's yoga to me. So creating something where everyone feels supported, uplifted, and welcomed.
I
So
like that. And I think that that beautifully resonates with like just the point of finding beauty in the nuance. And thank you so much for chatting with me today, Kaya. It's been a joy learning from you and just kind of getting to know about the studio. And I am wishing you many successful years ahead here in St. John's at Root to Rise. And for anyone local, you've got to go check out the studio.
come hang with us.
All right, guys, thanks for tuning in to today's interview. I'm sure you love hearing Bill and I chat about various topics, but truly, in the heart of nuance, it is wonderful to bring on a guest and have a conversation. So I hope you enjoyed, and until next time.